Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. Now I know how much all of you love hearing the backstage secrets of how the show is made, and I know how much you also love my compilation videos. So today we're going to be going through 31 backstage production secrets of RuPaul's Drag Race that you never knew about. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Best Judies. Drag Race has changed a lot over the years, and the format of the show itself is quite different to what it was originally intended to be. Although it's been said by many people, it was actually confirmed in an interview with Season 6's Kellie Mantle that the original concept for the show was it was going to be about drag queens and their best Judies, i.e. their best friends. Kellie said that she was offered the first season of Drag Race, and the way they pitched it was as a mix between America's Next Top Model and Project Runway. The idea was that each contestant would be allowed to bring a friend who would be a stylist or costume designer / hair and makeup person with you, and you would all be living in a house together. This means that the show itself changed a lot and became the show that we now love today, but it meant that queens like Victoria Porkchop Parker were kind of left in a bad situation because she originally thought that she would be able to bring someone to help sew because she can't really sew herself, and that obviously was not the case, which is partly why she ended up being eliminated in the first episode. Also, with some bonus tea about Kellie Mantle, she also said in an interview that she only got the list of outfits that she had to prepare for the runway 6 days before they started filming, which she explained is why some of the outfits that she had looked quite simple compared to others, because she didn't have time to get even the most basic of outfits done, let alone get anything bespoke designed. The confessionals. As we all know, each contestant films what are called confessionals, which is when they talk about what's happening on the show and everything out of drag, and these are then interspersed throughout the episodes. What you may not know though is that the confessionals are actually filmed at different times and are used in different places. For example, in my interview with Juicy Couture, who appeared on Drag Race Holland Season 2, she confirmed that even though she was eliminated in the first episode, she actually had to stay and film her confessionals even after she was eliminated, because the eliminations are filmed and then confessionals are filmed after each week's worth of episodes. The contestants are actually told to wear the same outfit for their confessionals so that the production can take any snippet they want of the confessional and use it in any part of the episode, even if the person wasn't talking about that specific moment when they said it, but because they're wearing the same outfit, you can't always tell. The reason they introduced this rule was because in the earlier seasons, you could tell when they had changed parts of the confessionals and taken it from different points. For example, in one episode in season 3, Shangela was talking about one of her fellow contestants, Stacey Lynn Matthews, and she was wearing this top that says Hallelujah with corn on it. And then in the very next second, they switch back to the confessional and Shangela is wearing a completely different t-shirt. And when you listen back to it, you can even tell that they've spliced these two parts of different confessionals but tried to make it sound like Shangela was talking about the same thing, when in reality these confessionals would have been filmed at completely different times. Eliminations. As we know, at the end of each episode, at least one queen is asked to sashay away, and they then say that they go home after being eliminated, although that's not actually always the case. For example, Monet Exchange, who appeared on Season 10 and All Stars 4, said during Sibling Rivalry, which is her podcast, that the eliminated queens, for example Vanjie and Calorie, had been eliminated, but none of the queens were allowed to talk to them, but they still had the promo to film, even though technically those queens had been eliminated, they were still there. Whereas Ariel Versace, who appeared on Season 11, said that the eliminated queens flew home and then had to fly back to the studio for the makeover challenge. And Ben de la Creme said that during All Stars 3, after her self-elimination, that she was made to stay in her hotel room until the end of the season because the queens had to come back to vote for the winner. Lip sync songs. As we know, the queens have to prepare a lip sync, especially if you're in the bottom two, and you are given an iPod with the songs on at the beginning of the season. And this is why you can often see queens with a headphone in during Untucked while they're preparing for their lip sync. But what you may not know is that the queens are actually given more songs than there are actual episodes, and they don't always know which song is going to appear when, and sometimes they also throw in fake songs that will never be used, but it's just so that the queens don't actually know which songs they need to prepare, so it's a bit more spontaneous. For example, Reggie B from Drag Race Holland Season 2 said during an interview that I had with her that she was actually given on the iPod around 11 songs, even though there were actually only 8 episodes. And the contestants are usually only told maybe a day or so in advance which song they'll be lip syncing to that week. They do often also change songs at the last minute. For example, when Jinx and Detox during season 5 had to lip sync, it was originally supposed to be a different song, but they changed it to Malambo number 1 at the last minute. And I've talked about this in a previous video, but it was basically because production were trying to favour Jinx and give her a song that they thought she could perform better in. But it does prove that they do change lip sync songs very quickly, even if it's just the day before, and the queens are often not given much notice. Gag order. As we know, the queens are not allowed to talk about the season before it's aired, or even announce that they are on the show before it's been officially announced. But what you may not also know is that during filming, the queens are actually separated from each other even once they know who's on the show. The queens are often locked in their hotel rooms and are not allowed to talk to any of the other contestants at any point during the filming when they're not on camera. This is to ensure that any drama that happens is caught on camera and doesn't happen off screen. The reason for this is because during some of the earlier seasons, the queens actually used to meet up in their hotel room and talk to each other, and any beef or drama that they had, they kind of resolved that off camera. So then when they'd come in the next day, the producers would say, "Oh, how are you feeling after your fight with this person?" And because they had already sorted it all and resolved it off camera, it meant it wasn't quite as good drama for the camera. So that's why the producers stopped the contestants talking to each other apart from when they're on camera. Even when they're, for example, in the truck going from place to place, they're still not supposed to talk to each other. Under the counter. RuPaul and the other judges are often all made up with good hair and makeup, looking very glamorous, and they sit behind a desk or a counter for the whole of the main stage. What you may not know though is that what happens behind the counter. It's been rumoured for a long time that RuPaul wears some kind of sweatpants that you can't see from underneath the counter while filming, and is not actually in drag for very long. And this was actually proven during an episode of Untucked, where you can see RuPaul returning to the main stage wearing some form of sweatpants. This is why Utica, during the season 13 roast, said, "RuPaul, you're such a fashion icon, if you could please stand up for us." RuPaul then flipped Utica off and everyone laughed, but what you may not have realised is the reason they were laughing is because Utica was effectively calling out RuPaul for wearing sweatpants, and it's kind of an unspoken truth. Season 8 winner Bob the Drag Queen also confirmed this about the sweatpants and said in an interview once, quote, "It is a known fact that RuPaul's dresses are in 2 chunks. Sometimes she'll work the runway and take off all of her padding and put on some sweatpants and Ugg slippers and walk around the studio. Everyone knows this. RuPaul gets out of drag from the waist down to sit behind the table, which I would do too." Suitcases. The queens apparently have a limit of 5 suitcases per contestant that they're allowed to bring with them. This might sound like a lot, but to fit in multiple and elaborate costumes as well as wigs, makeup and anything else, this isn't actually that much. However, this doesn't seem to be true for every franchise. For example, Envy Peru, who was the winner of Drag Race Holland Season 1, said that for their season, all of the queens were allowed to fill an entire truck with all of their outfits, which seems very different to the 5 suitcase limit that the US queens have, which could explain why some of the people from Drag Race Holland had really elaborate outfits and were able to bring them to the show because they didn't have to fit them all in a suitcase. Double take on the runway. It's been confirmed by multiple queens that they walk the runway twice, once with music and once without music, so that the judges can record their funny little jokes and quips during the silent runway walk. They also do this to ensure that they can film the runway from multiple angles to always get the best shot. But this does mean that the contestants can hear the judges' funny quips during the time when they're walking the runway without music. For example, on season 7, Ginger Minj said during an episode of Untucked that she could hear the judges making jokes. For example, when Ross said that she looked like, quote, the other white leather. It's also been confirmed that any of the musicals or musical numbers are also filmed more than once to make sure that they get a good take. For example, Katya said that during All Stars 2, they filmed Read You Wrote You twice. For example, Katya said that in one of the takes, she dropped the fan that she was holding, but they actually ended up not using that part of the take and they didn't show her dropping the fan. The other reason this seems surprising is because if they do multiple takes, but they still show one of the queens messing up and going wrong, they must have had a take where they didn't do that but decided to show the bad take, and then other times they seem to use the good take. Who's the winner? As you know, at the end of each season, one queen is crowned the winner. What you may not know though is that each finalist is actually filmed being the winner, and so that way none of the finalists actually know who is the winner of the season until they watch it on TV, so the audience and the drag queen contestants themselves find out who won at the same time. The reason they do it this way is to stop any leaks from happening as to who won, because this happened in one of the previous seasons when Raja won and everyone knew about it. For example, Bianca Del Rio said during an interview that during the season 6 finale, they filmed each of the 3 finalists winning, and they also filmed a tie between Bianca and Adore, which Bianca said she felt bad about because it was clearly obvious that Courtney was not going to win because they didn't film a tie with her. They only filmed it with Adore and Bianca. This is why they're able to film the reactions of the finalists finding out who actually won, because none of them actually know because they all film themselves winning and they only find out when the episode airs on TV. And the same also goes for the top 4. For example, Bob the Drag Queen once said in an interview that during the season 8 finale, they actually filmed Bob losing and being eliminated from the top 4, i.e. not getting into the finale, even though she actually eventually did, but they filmed each contestant being eliminated so that none of them know who actually got into the finale until the episode airs. Frankenstein footage. So, we all know that reality TV, despite the name, is quite often anything but reality, and this is unsurprisingly often the case with Drag Race. Several Drag Race contestants have claimed that the producers take certain parts of the footage they have and cut it together with footage from a completely separate moment in order to create the narrative that the producers want. In other words, creating their own version of events. Because of this mashing of lots of different parts together of the different footage, it's sometimes called Frankenstein editing because the Frankenstein monster was also made up of lots of different parts. An example of this can be seen in season 4 with Jeremy Carey, formerly known as Fifi O'Hara. In the episode 6 challenge, Float Your Boat, during the lip sync, Milan takes off her wig and then it cuts to Jeremy's confessional where Jeremy says, quote, "That's clearly a dude." This was supposed to make it sound as though Jeremy was referring to Milan as a dude. However, we can tell by what Jeremy is wearing that this confessional came from another day. Earlier in the same episode, when Jeremy is talking about Jiggly Caliente's boat, Jeremy is wearing a totally different outfit. In fact, this exact same soundbite of Jeremy saying, quote, "That's clearly a dude," was also used in episode 10, which was called Dads I'd Like to Frock, when the contestants had to make over fathers. In the episode, Jeremy is talking about his partner for the episode and commenting on how the father has a very masculine walk. So it appears as though the producers took the soundbite from this episode and applied it to an earlier episode to make it look like Jeremy was calling Milan a dude, even though Jeremy wasn't talking about Milan when he said that. There's also a similar story that YouTuber Joseph Shepherd talked about on his channel during an interview with Season 9 contestant Peppermint. Joseph said that he was in the audience for the Season 9 finale, and at one point they show a shot of him cheering in the audience just after Sasha Velour did her infamous rose petal reveal. However, Joseph said that actually he was cheering for Peppermint's reveal, but in the edit they made it look like he was cheering for Sasha's reveal. Joseph went on to say that the Sasha rose petal reveal, quote, wasn't that big of a deal in the theatre because it was hard to see what was going on, probably because the stage is far away, and you only got to really see it properly when you watched it on TV. And this also lends itself to the theory that producers use footage in order to create different narratives to what actually happened. Fake chocolate. In season 14 of Drag Race US, they introduced something that they hadn't done before, where they gave each contestant a chocolate bar, and one of them was the golden chocolate bar which would save them from elimination. And at the end of each lip sync, the moment where the contestants open the chocolate bar to see if it's the golden one or not, and then they say, quote, it's chocolate, went viral online. However, many people questioned whether production knew which queen had the golden chocolate bar and if they were manipulating the situation. And people also were skeptical because on the show, it was made to look like the queens had the chocolate bar underneath their clothes while lip syncing, but if that were the case, the chocolate would most likely melt. During a viewing party at Roscoe's Tavern in Chicago, the queens who were there, which were Orion Story, Diabetti and Maddie Morphosis, were asked about this topic and Orion spilt some tea. One of the hosts asked, "Do you eat the chocolate?" And Orion responded by saying, quote, "It was plastic, it wasn't real chocolate." Maddie and Dia then look very shocked that Orion had admitted to that, and it's assumed by their reaction that it's because this was a production secret and Orion wasn't supposed to talk about it. Maddie then pulls out her phone and jokingly says, quote, "Ru just texted me, you're in trouble." And then Orion made a joke about a sniper rifle dot appearing on her forehead. Outfits provided by production. As we all know, the contestants are sent a list of each runway category several weeks before filming so they can prepare the outfits to bring with them. However, there are some group challenges where it's unclear if the queens were told to bring the outfits or whether they were provided by production, because often the outfits match so perfectly to each other and other times they don't. This question was actually addressed by Season 8 contestant Naysha Lopez during a viewing party at Roscoe's. That week's guests at Roscoe's were Season 14 contestants Kerry Colby and Deja Sky, and Naysha asked them whether they were provided outfits for the 60s girl group challenge. Naysha then went on to explain that on her season, quote, "there was a rack and we got to pick our outfits." Kerry then explained that, quote, "they had a selection of outfits and each outfit was pre-selected for the group." But this doesn't seem to be the case for every season. For example, on Drag Race UK Season 2, the Eurovision Song Contest in Episode 5, the queens were separated into two groups and had to find costumes for themselves to wear out of their own wardrobes. And during the judges' critiques, the losing team was criticised for not having matching outfits, and Judge Graham Norton even said, quote, "all your looks, even though there was a colour palette through it, it didn't gel as a group." So it does seem unfair in a way that some people are given outfits for the challenges and then on other seasons they're not given outfits and then they get judged on not having matching outfits. Lost footage. Art Simone competed on Season 1 of Drag Race Down Under and was eliminated in Episode 2, but then returned to the competition in Episode 4. It was never explained why Art returned to the competition, and there were many fan theories circulating on the internet. The issue was once again brought up in June 2022 when Art tweeted saying, quote, "Oh my god, the NDAs for Drag Race Down Under expire in 6 days. I wonder if anyone has any questions." And she later posted a video of herself pulling lots of receipts out of a bag, and the caption said, quote, "I'm ready." She also implied there was some drama involving fellow competitor, etc., when a fan tweeted to Art and asked, quote, "I always wondered why episode 5 didn't have an Untucked." And Art replied to this tweet saying, quote, "At Glamourbug, which is etc.'s Twitter handle, has some wonderful insights, ... But Art later seemingly backtracked on this and tweeted, quote, "Oh my god, my bad. I'm so terrible at maths. It's actually 600 years. I'm so silly." Many people on Twitter asked if Art was going to explain the reason why she was mysteriously brought back to the competition in episode 4. However, it appears as though Art may have already explained this previously. In a now deleted tweet from June 2021, Art said, quote, "Now that's over, am I allowed to talk about how they lost the footage and we had to come back days later to film my elimination, and then Coco Jumbo and I had to do that lip sync 3 times in a row?" So it is speculated that production lost the footage of their elimination, so Art was brought back in order to refilm it, although no official explanation has ever been given. And this caused some controversy amongst fans, who felt as though it was unfair to not invite back Coco Jumbo to the competition, and some people even accused the production of favouring Art, which is why they brought her back instead of Coco. Art also confirmed during a live appearance that it was her that sent the mysterious threatening letter to Coco Jumbo, leaving it on her station, and the letter said, quote, "Watch out." This is because Coco Jumbo was the one who eliminated Art in episode 2 by beating her in the lip sync. In the live appearance video, Art joked and said she, quote, "wrote it with her left hand so no one would know the letter was from her." The lipstick mystery. Starting in All Stars 5, they began a tradition where the top queen of the week would lip sync against a mystery lip sync assassin. The assassin is always a Drag Race alum, and if they win the lip sync, they have to reveal which queen the other queens have voted to leave the competition. The assassins are always shown pulling the lipstick out of their outfits before they reveal it, and in Untucked, they also show the assassin arriving to studio and being handed the lip sync before going on stage. So, this always begs the question from fans as to whether the queens lip sync with the lipstick in their outfit or not, because if they did, there would be the risk that it would fall out, and it may also be uncomfortable to lip sync with a lipstick digging into your skin. Well, this question seems to have been answered by Season 5 and All Stars 2 contestant Roxy Andrews. During a viewing party, Roxy was asked whether the queens perform with the lipsticks or whether they get them back after, and Roxy replied, quote, "We get them back." And this then answered the question that they do not in fact lip sync with the lipstick in their outfits, they get given it afterwards by production. Fake songwriting. One of the most standard challenges on Drag Race is that in the final episodes, the queens usually have to write and record their own verses to one of RuPaul's songs. And although it should be pretty obvious that a lot of post-production work is involved to create these verses, it may surprise you to know how long it takes. Art Simone, who competed on Drag Race Down Under Season 1, recently shared some interesting behind-the-scenes tea about the finale verses on Drag Race. On her Drag Race review show, Kick-Ons, Art said that the queens have to write and record their verses several days, maybe even weeks before the finale. And it all has to be sent to RuPaul's producer because he's the only one who RuPaul trusts to work on his music. So this means that when they show the queens sitting down in the episodes and listening to the tracks and writing their lyrics, this is all fake, and the queens have in fact already written and recorded their tracks a long time before. Art also said that because the queens record it so far in advance, some queens write and record their tracks, but they don't end up making it to the finale because they get eliminated the next episode before the finale, so their tracks are never used. And this has been supported by other queens. For example, Tatiana said that she did write a verse for the song Red You Wrote You for the All Stars 2 finale. But because Tatiana didn't make it to the finale, her verse was not used. And so Tatiana actually ended up using the lyrics for one of her songs on her own album so that the lyrics wouldn't go to waste. Breaking a boat. There have been some very unusual challenges on Drag Race over the years, and so it's probably no surprise that there have also been some behind-the-scenes mishaps as well. Well, Latrice Royale once spilled some interesting tea about the infamous boat challenge on season 4. You may remember that in episode 6, each queen was assigned a colour of the pride flag and had to decorate a parade boat in that colour. Well, Latrice Royale once spilled some very interesting backstage tea about this challenge during a podcast episode with Joey Nolfi of Entertainment Weekly. Latrice said that the producers brought in the boats for everyone, but they were all made to be the same size. But Latrice said that her boat didn't fit, and she said to the producers, quote, "I can't squeeze up in this, not with my body on, I put on padding." And so, production had to take her boat away and they had to break the boat up and rebuild it to be bigger. And this meant that while all of the other queens were decorating their boat, Latrice was just sitting there not able to do anything. Latrice then said that because she wasn't able to work on her boat while it was being rebuilt, production said that she could come in early the next day to work on her boat so that she could catch up. And Latrice described this as, quote, drama. Using Michelle's private bathroom. We've heard many stories over the years that the queens spend a long time filming and are often not allowed to go to the bathroom until filming has finished. And in fact, I have talked about this in previous videos, but queens such as Sasha Colby have previously admitted that they peed themselves on the main stage while filming. But what you may not know is that one queen once got to use a special private toilet that was just for one of the judges. In an interview on Maddie Morphosis' YouTube channel, Lawrence Chaney from Drag Race UK Season 2 said that she once got to use Michelle Visage's private toilet. Lawrence explained that during episode 4, the runway theme was Monster Mashup, and Lawrence was wearing a skin costume. Apparently, Lawrence knew that because the outfit was so difficult to get on, she couldn't get out of it to go to the bathroom, so she decided just to hold it in. However, the main stage critiques and the lip sync take around 3 hours or more to film, and by the end, Lawrence was desperate for the toilet. Also, that episode was the episode when Ginny Lemon unexpectedly walked out during the lip sync and quit the competition. And because this was unplanned, no one from production was there to greet Ginny when she walked off stage, and so she was apparently walking around backstage and production didn't know where she was. And this meant that all of the other queens, including Lawrence, were being held in a different room while producers were dealing with Ginny. Apparently, Lawrence said to one of the PAs that she needed to go to the bathroom urgently, but the PA said that they couldn't go until they were allowed to leave. And Lawrence apparently squatted and nearly peed and pooped herself and said that she needed to go to the toilet right away. Lawrence said that the PA grabbed her by the hand, and because there wasn't enough time to get to the Queen's toilets, they went to these toilets that were very fancy and close by. Lawrence at first thought that it was RuPaul's toilet because they were so fancy, but she later found out that it was actually the toilet for Michelle Visage or the guest judge. And just as some bonus tea, Lawrence also admitted in the same interview that she felt sorry for the crew while filming her season because Lawrence admitted that she was apparently, quote, quite difficult and was not very easy to deal with. And Lawrence shared a story that in the first episode, Lawrence kept talking even though they were supposed to be on what's called hard ice, which means that the queens aren't allowed to talk when the cameras aren't rolling. But Lawrence wasn't taking it seriously and just kept talking. And a PA kept asking Lawrence to stop talking, but Lawrence just laughed and said, quote, "Oh, but this is just fun, isn't it?" But the producer apparently replied and said, quote, "This isn't fun, this is your job. I'm a member of staff here, don't argue back." And Lawrence said that she was, quote, gagged because she had rightfully been told off. And then later that day, the PA said that they were ordering Nando's for dinner, and they asked the queens what they wanted from the menu. And when the PA asked what Lawrence wanted, Lawrence just said, quote, "I dunno, I'm on ice," and she wouldn't talk to the PA. And Lawrence joked that she didn't end up eating that night because she was being so petty and wouldn't speak to the PA. Hiding contestants. It's common knowledge by now that the contestants on Drag Race are not allowed to tell anyone that they are going to film the show. And once they arrive, the contestants are kept in their hotel rooms and are not allowed to leave or talk to anyone off camera. And they are also monitored by production staff, and this is to ensure that any drama or arguments get caught on camera. But there have been several times that queens have been hidden from other queens in order to stop their appearance on the show from being spoiled. For example, you may remember that on season 14 of Drag Race US, there was a split premiere over 2 episodes. And one queen was eliminated in each episode, but they were later brought back to the competition, namely Daya Betty and Orion Story. Well, Orion Story once spilled in an interview with Pressed Conference that she knew that she was going to be brought back and that the producers hid her from the other contestants. Orion was asked if she had to go all the way back home after filming her elimination, and Orion said she knew that she wasn't really going to be eliminated because they hadn't introduced the whole cast yet. But apparently when she was eliminated, the production assistants were really hamming it up and asking her if she was okay and whether she was disappointed to be eliminated first. But Orion told them that she knew that she wasn't really going to be eliminated, although the PAs completely denied knowing anything about it. And so Orion then had to film the part in the workroom where she was packing her suitcases and then got in the car to drive away. But then production told her that she was actually being kept in the competition and was coming back. Orion said she turned to the PA and said, quote, "I effing knew it." And the PA admitted that they knew the whole time and they just had to lie. Orion also said that all of the Queen's rooms are on one floor of the hotel, but after her elimination, Orion was moved up to a different floor of the hotel so that no one would see that she had come back. And Orion had to stay there for 5 days until she was brought back to the competition in episode 3, because they film about 2 episodes per week, Monday through Friday, and then they have the weekends off in their hotel rooms. Orion was also apparently given a sewing machine to use in her hotel room during that time, which Orion admitted that she ended up stealing. Fake judges' reactions. The judges are an integral part of Drag Race, and that includes not only the regular judges like RuPaul and Michelle, but also all of the guest judges. And with so many judges and different people coming and going, you can imagine that there is a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure the judges look camera ready. However, what you may not know is that often the judges' reactions and comments are not as real as they appear, and they are often filmed at different times to the actual runway. For example, Art Simone from Drag Race Down Under shared on her show Kick-Ons that on her season, for the talent show in episode 7, the contestants had to film their talent show numbers really early in the morning for some reason. But because it was so early, the judges, namely RuPaul, Michelle and Reese Nicholson, hadn't had time to go and have their hair and makeup done yet. So according to Art, while they were filming their talent show numbers, the judges were sitting there, but they were in their dressing gowns and none of them were in drag or in hair and makeup. And so later on, once the judges had had hair and makeup done, the judges had to go back to the main stage and film fake reaction shots that they then interspersed into the talent show to make it look like it was all filmed at the same time, even though they were actually filmed at totally different times. And other queens have also said similar things to back this up. For example, when I interviewed Coco Jumbo, also from Drag Race Down Under Season 1, she said that production lost the audio of her lip sync against Art Simone, and they had to refilm the whole thing days later. And they also had to refilm the judges' reactions and comments several days after the original runway. I'll put a link in the description to the full clip of Coco talking about this, and make sure you check it out because it was really interesting. Edited out inappropriate jokes. We all know that humour is a big part of Drag Race, and a lot of the queens have delivered some amazing jokes over the years on the show. But it's also true that drag queens can sometimes have quite an unfiltered sense of humour, which doesn't always go down well and ends up being cut out of the episode. One example of this comes from Katya on season 7. Katya once admitted in a review video on her YouTube channel that she made an inappropriate joke on the main stage and they edited it out. It was during episode 6 where the main challenge was the Ru Hollywood Stories and the runway theme was Death Becomes Her. Katya won that episode and said that she was, quote, completely caught off guard. And apparently RuPaul asked Katya how she felt winning the challenge, and Katya made a joke and said, quote, well, it was a long battle with leukemia, but at least I was surrounded by friends and family. And apparently the joke completely fell flat and no one laughed, and no one was looking at Katya, presumably because they all felt really awkward, and so that joke was cut out of the episode. We've also heard similar things from other contestants too. For example, Yvie Oddly, who was the winner of season 11, when she was filming her winning speech at the finale, Yvie originally made a joke and said, quote, go eat a baby. And this was apparently a running joke that Yvie had said throughout the season. But apparently RuPaul and the producers didn't laugh and thought it sounded inappropriate, so they made her refilm her winning speech, and instead she said, quote, let your freak frag fly. Why RuPaul can't host Canada's Drag Race? RuPaul has been hosting Drag Race since it first started in 2009, and he and Michelle have hosted not only Drag Race US, but also Drag Race UK and Drag Race Down Under. And so some people were curious as to why RuPaul and Michelle don't host Canada's Drag Race, which is the other English-speaking franchise that RuPaul and Michelle do not host. And although there has never been an official reason given as to why RuPaul doesn't host Canada's Drag Race, there are a few theories that seem to be pretty believable. The first theory is that when Canada's Drag Race first started being filmed, sometime in late 2019, RuPaul was busy filming her show, AJ and the Queen, which was being filmed around the same time. The other theory, though, is a bit more interesting, which is that there is a rule in Canada which limits non-Canadians from being involved in Canadian TV shows. There is a rule in Canadian TV and radio called Canadian Content, which is also known as CanCon. And the rule states that, quote, radio and television broadcasters, including cable and satellite specialty channels, must produce and/or broadcast a certain percentage of content that was at least partially written, produced, presented, or otherwise contributed to by persons from Canada. The rule also means that Canadian productions get more financial funding if they are hosted by Canadians. And so that may be why Brooklyn Heights was chosen to be the host, because she is originally from Canada. Fake green screen messages. Drag Race is no stranger to a green screen, and they are often used during acting challenges so that they can superimpose the queens onto different backgrounds. And there were even rumours that RuPaul was not really there in person for Drag Race Down Under Season 1 and that he was green screened in. However, this rumour was debunked by several contestants such as Coco Jumbo when I interviewed her. And they even joked about this on the second season of Drag Race Down Under when RuPaul slapped Spanky Jackson to prove that he was really there in person. However, some queens have admitted that there were some green screen moments on Drag Race that were actually fake and that they were put in by production. For example, you may remember on Drag Race US Season 14, Jennifer Lopez made a guest appearance during episode 4 because the runway theme that week was Night of 1,000 JLos. However, Season 14 contestant Bosco once revealed at a Roscoe's viewing party that they didn't actually see JLo on screen and it was just a green screen. But the producers read out what JLo had said, and the queens had to react to what she was saying, even though they never actually saw the real footage until later. And Trinity the Tuck, who was also at the same Roscoe's viewing party, said that the same thing happened on All Stars 7 when they had Kennedy Davenport's video message for the roast episode. And all the contestants saw was a green screen, and they didn't actually see Kennedy's video at all. And Trinity joked that that's why all the queens looked confused when that moment happened, because all they could see was an empty green screen. Something similar also happened on Drag Race UK Season 2, which famously got shut down partway through the season due to the COVID-19 pandemic which had just started. And the contestants have admitted that the video message that we saw of RuPaul was clearly filmed afterwards. And in real life, what happened was that the contestants were called over to the TV screen and they had to pretend that they were watching a real video message. And then one of the production staff came out and read out what the video message was going to be and then told them all that the production was going to shut down. But then they added in RuPaul's video message in post-production. And if you like these videos and want to see more of them, please make sure you subscribe to my channel to get notified when I post more videos. Thank you! What's actually in the Drag Race contract? We've all heard rumours over the years about what's in the Drag Race contract, and there have even been videos going through this because over the years, the alleged contract has been leaked online. Reality Blurred got their hands on a full Drag Race contract from season 8, and some of the clauses in it are pretty crazy. The first one that really stood out was that the queens have to agree to the following clause, quote, "I agree all risks of interacting with the other participants and anything else, including any consensual, intimate contact that I may enter into." Which means that the queens cannot sue the show if they hook up with another contestant during filming and end up catching a disease or medical condition. This is pretty standard in show contracts, but the fact that this clause exists tells you a lot about what the producers expect to happen behind the scenes. The contract also says that producers own the rights and proceeds to anything the Queen does on the show, including their characters, songs, and even what the contract calls, quote, "elements of my life story." But the bit that I think may surprise a lot of you is that the Drag Race contestants apparently also have to give the producers a cut of their YouTube revenue after the show, and the queens are exclusive to the producers for 24 months after their last episode airs. So if the queens use their post-show fame to build big YouTube channels, World of Wonder is apparently taking a percentage of their profits if this contract is to be believed. And there's another clause that I found that comes from one of the producers themselves. Drag Race Challenge producer Todd Masterson revealed on the Tony Soto show that there's a non-fraternization clause for production staff. What this means is that even after a queen is eliminated, the producers are not allowed to be friends with them until after the finale has aired. And this is apparently to make sure that no information about who's still in the competition can leak out through producer friendships. So when you put all of this together, the queens are basically signing away a potentially huge amount of control and money before they even walk through the workroom doors. Season 1, the lost blurry season. So we all know that season 1 of Drag Race is the season that no one really talks about much because it's famously hazy and blurry when watching, and the Logo Network themselves now refers to it as, quote, the lost season. But what you may not know is just how cheaply season 1 was made and the bizarre fixes they used to make it look supposedly better. For years, fans have joked that the dreamy, soft focus look of season 1 was Vaseline smeared onto the camera lenses. Season 1 judge Merle Ginsburg was asked about this in an interview with Joseph Shepard, and she confirmed it was actually Ru who told them to do this. But on top of that, it has also been confirmed that it was not actual Vaseline on the lens. Season 1 queen Ongina cleared this up on Instagram back in 2018. She said, "I remember them adding these sheets of plastic or something over the camera lenses while shooting, so despite popular beliefs, it was not Vaseline." And Season 1 winner Bibi Zahara Benet later confirmed something similar in the EW Binge podcast, saying that production was constantly adjusting, quote, some lighting thing to make the cheap setup look more cinematic. And when you hear how cheap Season 1 was to make, the plastic sheets over the cameras start to make a bit more sense. Season 1 was apparently filmed in a Burbank studio basement. The control room where producers monitored everything was apparently an actual broom closet. And while the judges deliberated, the eliminated queens just had to wait in a hallway because there wasn't really anywhere else to put them. The grand prize for season 1 was also only $20,000, which sounded like a lot at the time, but it is a far cry from the $200,000 prize that the queens compete for nowadays. And this is also why in 2013, Logo officially re-aired season 1 with new commentary and called it RuPaul's Drag Race: The Lost Season Revealed. It also included the Meet the Queens, which are all available on YouTube. Entrance lines get changed. One of the most iconic moments from any Drag Race season is when the queens deliver their entrance lines as they walk into the workroom for the first time. However, before season 6, most of the queens just said hello and then their names, although there were a few exceptions. But it has been rumoured that season 6 was apparently the first season where the queens were told in advance that they needed to prepare proper entrance lines. Bianca Del Rio appeared on the Race Chaser podcast and revealed that her original entrance line was going to be something like, "Am I in a nostril? 'Cause all I see is boogers." But the producer then said, quote, "What if you're the first one in?" Which heavily implied that Bianca was going to be the first one, and then that line would not make much sense in an empty room. So Bianca had to change her entrance line to, quote, well, I hope you B-words are ready." So you may have assumed that the queens come up with their entrance lines themselves and practice them beforehand. But Jan from season 12 once revealed on TikTok that her original entrance line was going to be, quote, "I've got this in the bag," which was obviously a reference to her name being Jan Sport, which is a bag brand. But the producers vetoed this entrance line at the last minute. They told her to save that for a confessional later in the episode, and they gave her just 20 minutes to come up with a new entrance line before she filmed it. What Jan ended up saying was, quote, "Hey y'all, let's play some basketball, yeah." Jan has also confirmed that this wasn't just a one-off thing. Producers apparently regularly tweak entrance lines, change them or veto them, sometimes just minutes before the queen walks in, usually for legal reasons. The promo shoots are a secret reunion. The promo shoots are an important part of any season of Drag Race because they are usually the first impression we get of the queens. So you might assume that they're filmed before the season starts when no one has been eliminated, or after the season finishes when everyone's allowed to be together. But it turns out that neither of those things is always true. Jan from season 12 revealed that the cast promo shoots actually happen in the middle of filming, after some of the queens have been eliminated, but before the final episode is shot. This means that the eliminated queens are flown back in specifically for the promo shoots, and they actually get to hang out together. Jan described it as a, quote, "little reunion before the reunion." And the wild part is that the eliminated queens have to come back into the bubble of secrecy, no phones, no contact with the outside world, and then once the shoot is done, they have to leave again and wait until their season airs to talk about it again. This has also been confirmed by other queens as well. For example, Naysha Lopez has revealed that after she was eliminated first on season 8 and before she was brought back later in the season, she had to go back to film the promo. But because she was technically eliminated at that point, she was not allowed to speak to any of the other queens on set. So they had a member of production sit with Naysha to make sure that she did not speak to anyone else. And apparently the other queens thought Naysha was being rude because they would go up to her and ask her how she is, but she was not able to answer them. And on a different franchise, which is Canada's Drag Race on season 1, during the Sorry Not Sorry Girl Group Challenge where they had to do a rap battle, the contestant Boa said, quote, "Scarlet Bobo looks are a no-no, dressed as a clown and it showed in the promo." So this confirms that they must have filmed the promo for Canada Season 1 around the time of the first episode, otherwise Boa would not have known to put that in her verse. However, this has apparently now changed, and in the later seasons, after around season 9, they started filming the promos at the end of the season, sometimes many months after, which is why some queens come back with much more elevated looks than they had during the season. But it's interesting that in earlier seasons, the queens had to film the promos partway through the season, with some queens who had already been eliminated, so it was kind of like a reunion before the actual reunion. Are the Drag Race winners rigged? Most Drag Race fans know by now that ever since season 3, each finalist has to film themselves winning so that no one knows who actually wins, even the queens themselves. This is because before season 3 aired, Raja's win was leaked by blogger Perez Hilton. But what you may not know is that at the season 4 finale, something happened that may suggest that the winner is predetermined. Willem spilled the tea on the Race Chaser podcast about what really happened when Fifi O'Hara, who now goes by Jeremy, filmed her version of her winning.
First they crowned Chad, and then everybody thought Chad won, and then they crowned Sharon, and then they crowned Fifi, and when they crowned Fifi, this big prism paperweight that she had on her corset fell to the ground, and when she bent to pick it up, the crown fell off of her head, and then she looked at them after like, should we reset? Can we do it again? And Ru basically just gave a move on thing. Like, we knew
RuPaul said, no, we're fine. We got it.
We knew that it was definitely not a Fifi win at that point because they didn't have a clean take of her winning.
And this revelation is one of many reasons why some fans think that the winner is predetermined, and even the show themselves does not try and hide it, especially in the early seasons. Copyright drama. We all know that running a show like Drag Race involves a huge amount of licensing and copyright clearances, such as music, photos, and references, etc. But there are some long-standing rumours amongst Drag Race fans about copyright concerns actually shaping some of the moments we've seen on the show. The first rumour is about the Night of 1,000 runway theme, where they do runways inspired by a famous person, which has become a staple format over the years. There's a rumour that, after Season 8's Night of 1,000 Madonna's runway, where multiple people wore kimonos, the show had to pay massive licensing fees for the music video and film reference photos that the queens had used. Ever since, queens have allegedly been restricted to only using public appearance photos like red carpet looks, because the show can buy those images from the website Getty Images for much cheaper, whereas music video looks are much more expensive. This is because the rights to photos from red carpets or other events are held by the photographer who took the photos, whereas the rights to photos or images from music videos or movies are held by the studios or labels, which are much more complicated and expensive to secure the rights to. And there's something that does lend a bit of weight to this rumour. Maddie Morphosis from season 14 posted on Instagram after her season aired that her original look for the Night of 1,000 JLo's runway was one of the Dreamworld outfits from the film The Cell. But Maddie said production told her that she was not able to wear it on the main stage, probably because it would have been expensive to get the rights to that photo. The second rumour about copyright is to do with Raven and the Season 2 reunion. According to a rumour posted in an article by TV Tropes, Raven originally turned up to the Season 2 reunion dressed as the evil queen from Disney's Snow White. Not just inspired by the character, but actual cosplay, because on the season she had been called a villain. According to this rumour I found, the producers were so concerned about Disney coming for them for copyright that they actually made Raven change on set. So the simple black party dress that she ended up wearing during the reunion was apparently something production rushed out to buy for themselves so they could give it to her. I did try and see if I could find anything to corroborate this, but I couldn't find any official sources, so this may be an unverified rumour and may not be true, but it does fit the pattern of how cautious Drag Race is about copyright, so I just wanted to mention it just in case. Snatch Game order. Snatch Game is probably the most iconic recurring challenge in all of Drag Race history. And although it looks like a free-flowing game show, there is apparently a strict order to how the queens answer. Q from season 16 revealed on Maddie Morphosis' YouTube channel that during Snatch Game, the contestants do not answer randomly, they go in alphabetical order of their character's first name. So if you've been impersonating someone whose name starts with an A, you're always going to get the first answer. And for example, Q impersonated Amelia Earhart, so she would have been the first person to answer every time. Now, I don't think Q means that the queens sit in alphabetical order, because if we look at season 16's Snatch Game lineup, we can see that the queens are not sat in alphabetical order. But what she means probably is, when RuPaul asks each queen to give their answer, it is done alphabetically. Because as some of you may or may not know, what we see is a much more condensed version of Snatch Game, and in reality, every queen has to answer every question, which is why filming Snatch Game can sometimes take hours. But they only show a fraction of the answers in the edit, and they also change the order. This is just a small thing, but I think it does change how you watch the challenge back, and it may explain why some queens in the Snatch Game seem to get more or less screen time than others, and why some queens get to riff off the earlier answers, whereas others have to go in cold. This was also backed up recently in an interview I did with Marmalade from Drag Race UK Season 6, which I'll link to in the description. She said that on her Snatch Game, they just went down the line, left to right, top to bottom every single time. And because Marmalade was in the top left, she was always the first person to give her answer, and didn't get as much time to prepare as the others. So it seems that the way Snatch Game is filmed may be different between franchises, but the general format is still the same, and I just thought this was an interesting behind the scenes fact. Pit crew scouting. The pit crew has been a staple of Drag Race since the start of the show and has had many different lineups throughout the years. A lot of fans may assume that the pit crew goes through some kind of formal audition process, a bit like the queens do, but that's apparently not how it works. Long-running pit crew member Bryce Eilenberg has revealed in multiple interviews that he was actually scouted off an online modelling platform called Model Mayhem. Back in 2014, Bryce had posted some photos of him imitating a David Beckham Emporio Armani underwear ad on his Model Mayhem account. A casting agent for Drag Race then saw these photos and just reached out and offered him the role as a pit crew member. The other interesting thing is, Bryce is not a full-time model. He's actually a working aerospace engineer with a degree from UCLA. So Drag Race has a literal rocket scientist on the pit crew. Bryce has said in interviews that Drag Race only takes about 10 to 20 days of filming per year, so he's been able to keep both careers going at the same time. And other pit crew members have also revealed that there is not a formal audition process. Most of them got their roles through go-go dancing in gay clubs or through friends of friends who worked in the casting department. Drag Race sued a leaker. We all know that spoilers are a huge part of Drag Race. Every season we see information leaked online before episodes have even aired, and although sometimes these spoilers are not correct, most of the time they are very accurate, which means someone from within the company must be leaking this information. But what you might not know is that in 2018, World of Wonder actually took someone to court over a spoiler. In February 2018, an anonymous account on Reddit, Instagram and Twitter using the name Reality TV Leaks started posting spoilers for All Stars 3 before each episode aired. They were posting elimination orders, runway reveals, challenge spoilers, etc., and they were even openly mocking World of Wonder publicly by posting memes about it. According to court documents obtained by Deadline, World of Wonder responded by filing a lawsuit against this anonymous leaker seeking $300,000 in damages. That's $150,000 per infringed episode, plus $25,000 per individual violation. After the lawsuit was filed, the leakers' social media accounts went private and eventually disappeared altogether, so whether they actually paid up or just went underground is unknown. Another interesting angle of this situation is that despite all of this, the lawsuit did not actually stop the spoilers. The spoilers used to be posted on the RuPaul's Drag Race Reddit, but after the lawsuit there was a crackdown on it. So a subreddit called Our Spoiled Drag Race was created specifically as a workaround so fans could keep posting these spoilers in a less policed space. There have still continued to be leaks and spoilers on every season of Drag Race. However, Drag Race has now just apparently started switching to issuing DMCA copyright takedown notices rather than filing lawsuits because it's a cheaper process. There have also been rumours over the years that the Drag Race producers themselves are the ones leaking spoilers to try and create buzz about the show, but this is just a rumour and has never been confirmed, so you'll just have to make your own minds up about whether you think this is true or not. So there you go, there were some more backstage production secrets from RuPaul's Drag Race that show you that what you see isn't always the truth. Did you know about any of these production secrets before? And which ones surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. If you'd like to get things like early access, exclusive content, as well as many other benefits like priority to have your comments featured in my videos, you can check out either my Patreon, which is my main platform, or for a more convenient option if you want, you can also join my YouTube membership by clicking the join button under any of my videos. And there'll be links to both of those things in the description. I'd also like to say thank you so much to my amazing Patreon members. You are absolutely incredible. Your support truly does keep this channel going, and you have no idea how grateful I am to all of you, so honestly, thank you so much. Please make sure you like and comment on this video because it does help to boost it in the algorithm and promote it to even more people. And please make sure you do your big one and smash that subscribe button because it does make a big difference. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me in the future for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. Thank you so much. Bye.